Ayin Beis, Volume 1, page Sadik Dalad, 94, chapter 53, the beginning of Discourse 14. Shoftim v'sheitim titan lo abcha b'chol sharecha. Friedrich Rebbe's summary of this mimer is Teichen Hascholas HaMimer of the beginning, Ohr Ein Sof, Ohr v'Shefa. This will be chapters 53 through 56. So, we have concluded another subsection, and now begins a new subplot. In Ayin Beis, what we've concluded is, concluded relatively speaking, nothing's concluded when it comes to Ayin Beis, but we have the last four chapters, 49 through 52, have discussed basically faculties and desire, keches hanefesh, keches and ratzon, both within the human being, created with tzelem Elokim, the divine image. So from us, we reflect back to how it is in the divine, the structure of pnimi, immanent energy, internalized, integrated circuits, eris and kelim that work with each other, hislapshus, all the differences that I reviewed in the last class. And ratzon, desire, makif, a transcendent energy, does not manifest within the structure in any particular distinct way. It's there, but it's beyond. And its impact is commensurate to that. It impacts in a form of command, order. It impacts in a form of not being impacted as in return, and the differences that we've discussed. And from this we learn the difference between sovev kalam and memaleh kalam, memaleh kalam and a sovev kalam. As he concluded in the last chapter, that memaleh kalam is the way the divine manifests in each level according to that level, and all the implications that we find by faculties. And sovev kalam is that equalizer. In Avodah, the difference between Torah and mitzvahs. Torah is made up of different levels. There's also differences in people and their responsibility to learn Torah. Mitzvahs is an equalizer. Ratzon elyon. Alte, you shouldn't sit and measure and weigh the mitzvahs. Ultimate goal is the joining of pnimi and makif. That which is makif should become a pnimi, which the Rabbi Rabbi discussed at the end of last mimer, the previous mimer. It's been a recurrent theme. But you see that theme is only in the ends of the Maimarim when he talks about the particular verse. Because in the theme exactly where we are in the actual text, not beginnings and ends, still just in the discussion of laying out the map. He's not yet talked about how they all join together. But in the ends of the Maimarim, you already get a sense of so-called the purpose, because there he's already applying it to that particular verse, or mitzvah, or concept. Torah mitzvahs or like you said, nachamu, or we spoke before about mimana offer yankiv. Everywhere you find constantly the combination of the two levels working together, which explains all these psukim. So besides the actual understanding of Ayin Beis, the beginnings and ends of all the Maimarim also give us an insight. We talked about Paraduma, we talked about Yira Nava last chapter, we talked about Nacham, we talked about Siyam B'Mishpat Tepada. Every Maimer had its own manifestation of the same concept. So that's just another interesting take on the whole thing, that these ideas are universal throughout Torah.
Which is being the divine.
The transcendent into the immanent, basically, yeah. I mean, in truth, in the process of our own education and how we teach our children and so on, the same is true. Like he says in the Kotei Torah, you teach your children, the process of education is not just conveying facts. You want to convey to them a deeper reality, ultimately about God and ultimately about themselves. So you begin with a child, you teach something that the child gets today. Most of the rest is makif. Tomorrow, when I say tomorrow I mean in time, that becomes internalized. Then there's a new makif. So in truth, all growth is this way. Some things internal and you can relate to. Some things you still don't get. You don't get it, you get it on faith, it's too vague, whatever it may be. And the process of real growth is this never stops. through a person's life, they're always in that place. The things they internalize, and then now a new makif emerges. Really like climbing a mountain. You see the horizon, you climb a little higher, you see a bigger horizon. That doesn't mean you haven't climbed. Doesn't mean there is progress here. It's not like, oh, I'll never get it all. It's not correct. The more you get, the more you see what you don't get, and the more that's the growth. In Avodas Hashem, this is Ayin Beis. When you integrate, you relate to it, and the rest is more you stand in awe of. Then becomes the day when what you were in awe of, now you relate to, and then now you need a new level of awe. So this process is necessary. Really, if you want to go back to the whole interface, which we haven't talked about recently, but when you say Atzilus is Gilia Helam or Yesh Ma'ayin, is Chochma Gilia Helam Yesh Ma'ayin? Is it revealing something that's there already, or is it something new? That's the same thing. Atzilus on one hand senses closeness. Eitz Etzlei V'Samuch. Atzilus is close. Adam Elyon, you're similar to. Atzilus relates to the vision of God, of the spheres that we said, it's Gilead Helam compared to the 10 hidden spheres, it's Gilead Helam. But if you talk about that God had all the potential of infinite spheres, and even beyond, there Atzilus stands in awe. So really, Yesh Ma'ayin and Gilead Helam are not just two words. One evokes a sense of relationship, the other evokes a sense of awe, of mystery, mystique. And you really need both. The same is true in human relationships. I use this always for models. It's a beautiful model where you have a couple that are good together. You talk about two elements. One needs intimacy, the closeness, the relationship. They relate to each other in a very deep way. But there are also two distinct entities. There's a need for each person's space. One person becomes annihilated due to the other, you don't have a relationship. So how do you have like two circles and they become one like this, not the one like this? Like this. That's the point. Where each remains individual. Because it seems like a contradiction. If we're going to be one, how could two be one? But that's the whole point of what Tiferes is Shalom. It's harmony within diversity. And that's the thing, that on one hand there's individuality, there's a sense of mystery about the other person. And that's also part of the relationship. A healthy relationship should have an element of mystique. It shouldn't be that it's just like, you take for granted as if it's like your piece of property or something like that. There has to be that element of mystique. I know you're going to bring up Nigla that's so on, but that's not a stira. Maybe Sarah was Avram's property, but at times Hashem told him to listen to his property. So it's not like there's no seichel there. Say property is a halachic and legal matters. We're talking about a relationship. It's a relationship. Even Hashem with us, which is even more distant than a man and a woman. By Matan Torah, it's a shutef. It's a shutvis. God did not want just a subject. He wanted a partnership. Gave us free will, and for good or for bad, we can affect God in a way. It says God has pain, kalani mizreya, when a person doesn't do what he has to do. Bottom line is relationship. So these two elements of makif and pnimi, I just gave one example of application, but there are many. And the goal, obviously, is that we have an element of both. But now begins a new section that's coming to understand. All this is about understanding Elokus, godliness. So to understand this whole discussion, I should add one more thing. So memaleh kalam, the interface, is like the divine as it speaks to existence. Makif, sovev kalam, is the divine that represents the divine. So if you have two forces, one speaks Hebrew, one speaks English, you need a translator. The interface has to speak both Hebrew and English. Who represents the Hebrew? Who represents the divine? That's sovev kalam. Who represents, so to speak, existence? That's memaleh kalam. Now, sovev memaleh avayu hu elakim. Those two are one. But that's how the interface takes place. So you have two entities that initially are apart and actually antithetical. A material, mundane world, a yesh, and a spiritual, divine reality that's a completely different one. And then God manifests two types of energies. One that will tell you about me, and one that's going to give you life and help you understand yourself. And you climb the ladder first through memaleh into sovev, all the way into the etzem. So now he's going to start discussing what is this thing called gili mina etzem. We've established that rotzen, desire, and ohr there's a thing called gilim min ha'etzem, as opposed to memaleh, which had a tafkid, a purpose. The sun's purpose is to radiate this earth. A color of an object's purpose is just, it has no purpose. It's just reflection of the object itself. So there's that concept that something is revealing what the divine is like. That's all it does. And then there's the artist as he envisions the piece of art. So that's the energy, memaleh, and the energy, pnimi, the essence spheres, agnuzas, the 10 hidden spheres. That's the energy that is going to create and define existence. And then there's the energy, as I said, which reflects the divine. What is that energy? And that's what we're going to be discussing now. She's going to go into a whole discussion. What is Ohr Ein Sof? So it begins on page Tzadik Daled, 94, Maimer Shoftim, Tafresh Ayin Beis, 2012. It was deep in the summer of Lubavitch when this Maimer was said. So Shoftim v'Shoftim titn lecha b'chol sharecha, you shall appoint in all your gates judges and law enforcers, police, if you wish, mishtara. We talked yesterday about Shoftim v'Shoftim as Shiva Shaftayich and Yetzayich. Just make reference. V'shoftu sa'am mishpat tzedek, and they should judge. And the nation mishpat tzedek, a just rule, mishpat tzedek, meaning an honest and righteous law and order, basically. So this is the mitzvah we have about establishing law and order, the process. Shoftim are the judges, Shoftim are the enforcers, the deterrent. So you could have a judgment. Someone has to be able to implement and force.
There's also one of the Ayin Beis, right?
Yeah, is it derived from Shoftim v'Shoftim?
This is called Shalecha, your.
Yeah, but I think they talk about it, but I don't think it's derived from here. It's definitely derived. Listen, there's other psukim that refer about mishpash tzadik tideh for other,
I don't think it's derived from here.
Probably not. Yeah. But sharecha could also mean not necessarily Jewish sharecha. Sharecha could mean your municipalities. Yeah, right. The Isa b'Medrash Rabbah, and it's real, and it says Medrash Rabbah, Moshel Melech Shohilei Bonim Harbe. An example for a king who had many sons. And he loved the youngest one more than all. He had a field, an orchard. Right, Pardes is an orchard, not Sod is a field. And the king loved this orchard more than everything else, all of others' possessions. Omar HaMelech, said the king, I will give the property that I love so much to the one I love so much, meaning to his youngest son. That's the mashal. The same thing Hashem says. I love Israel more than all nations. All nations that I created. Because Yisrael is my child that I love, that is beloved. And from everything I've created, I love justice. Justice. Shenemer kani Hashem eiv mishpat. So there we go. A passage that says, because I, God, love justice. Ani nation sadav shani eiv lezeh shani eiv. So I will give justice, the thing I love so much, to the one I love. And that's what the pasuk says. Shoftim v'Shoftim titan lecha, like a matana, so to speak. I give it to you. I'm giving you the one I love, the thing I love most, which is the concept of mishpat. V'shaftu sa'am mishpat tzedek. That's through the process of Shoftim v'Shoftim. Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'schus ha'mishpat ani mashte shchinosi b'teicham. In the merit of this justice, meaning the justice you perform, I will rest, I will dwell, my shechina, my presence b'teicham, within you. Shenemar v'yigba Hashem tzvokes b'mishpat v'akel kodesh nigdash b'tzedakah. What is that pasuk? Is that Divrei Yamim?
No, we say it in Mafteris, we say it in
No, it's not Divrei Yom. Okay. So anyway, Vayigba Hashem Tzvok is b'mishpat, that a God, I guess, elevated. Vayigba Hashem, or God is more than that. He's proud of. Vayigba could be he's like almost like boasting. The mitzvah tzvok is b'mishpat, with judgment. Hakelat HaKadosh, the holy God, Nikdash b'tzedakah. He's sanctified through charity. Vayigba means God is like, I don't say exalted, it means elevated. Bottom line is it's a type of like elevation. U'b'schus ha-mishpat, and the merit of judgment. And Nigeil eschem, geula shlema, and merit of justice, I'll redeem you in a complete redemption. Shenem shamaru mishpat v'asu tzedakah ki krevi yeshuasi lave. Protect justice and perform charity, because my redemption, my salvation is close to come. And the appearance of this inyan is, but apparently this is the zesha eyevesakotten ulefishu kotten. That which the father loves the child, the youngest. Krevi Yeshuas Lavi, but not the other one, right? Okay. It's also Haftarah, right? Of which part? Of when?
I thought it was in the same one. I think
Okay. It's in the Shiva de Nechemta?
It's a peg away from this one.
Okay. Anyway, so from what he says in the Mashal, that the father loves his cotton, which why is that relevant here? He loves one of the sons. Who cares with these youngest? He says it's mashma. He loves him because he's cotton, because he's the young one. The lechein hevi al zeh pasuk kinai Yisrael v'aveyu. That's why he brings the pasuk kinai Yisrael v'aveyu as a child. The mashma sha'avi lefishu nar. In other words, it's not just incidental that he happens to be a child. It's because he's a child. Oh. The Klovasin Avali Yisrael, because the general love to Israel, we have many different verses that are said about this. I love you, says God. Yaakov, another pasuk. I love Jacob. And the fact that here in the Medrash brings this pasuk of all the verses is because it fits to the mashal of cotton. Because it's a child, because it's young. But tzarich lahavin ma'u ma'alas hakotten. Okay. But tzarich lahavin ma'u ma'alas hakotten. So we have to understand what is this virtue, the quality of a young, a cotton, a small one, child. Isn't an adult more precious, more valuable? And also we have to also understand what's the connection of this Nai Yisrael, that it's a child, to the idea of mishpat, of justice. In other words, if you think about what's the mashal here exactly? Why is it so important to focus on that this is my child that I love? And that's why I'm giving him justice. Connection, in other words, of justice to the child is what the Rebbe Rashab asks. What's also this inyan that in the merit of justice I will dwell among you, I will not my shechina among you. And the merit of justice, you'll be redeemed in a complete redemption. In other words, the Medrash says it, but what's the deeper connection? With the resting of the Shekhinah. So we know that God loves justice. Really, it comes down to what does it mean He loves justice, obviously. Because when He loves it, and you do it, then I appear among you, I rest among you, and two, I bring the redemption. Also, what is the meaning of the words, and judge the nation a righteous justice? Well, it's not corrupt. Well, Havin calls that yesh lahagdim. To understand all this, we have to preface Mashon is Baralel, that which we discussed earlier. Ahefesh bein harotzon l'kol hakeches. So here's the Rebbe Rashab summary, in his own words. The difference between desire and all the faculties. The kol ha-keiches heim b'mitzias la'atzman chutz la'atzmus nefesh. All the faculties are distinct, or you could say, mitzias la'atzman. They have their own particular, I wouldn't say separate, their own particular mitzias. Chutz la'atzmus nefesh. So when you say seichel, intelligence, yes, it's a faculty of the soul, but you can't say seichel equals soul. Like we said earlier about memaleh, you could say hu mekayim shalelam, hu tof is the soul manifests through the seichel, obviously. Like you said, it's a nefesh hamaskelas. But you cannot say seichel is the definition of the soul, because there's also other faculties. That means that they're not a distinct identity of within themselves. Whereas desire is not a mitzias la'atzmei. Does not have that type of distinct identity. Chutz la'atzmus nefesh, outside of the etzem of the soul. Because it's only the inclination, the leaning of, the transmission of, the expression of the soul. And on its own, it's nothingness. It's shapeless. It's substanceless. Like, let's say, he brought the example before. I think this example just works well. The color of an object. He has the color. What are you? I'm just the color of an object. The reason for this is because all the faculties, being that they're keiches faculties, so that's what a faculty means. It's an instrument. They're instruments. And the rotzen is expressing the soul's interest. And that's why the rotzen does not have distinctions, levels, division. And as it radiates within the organs and the faculties, it doesn't manifest in them. We said manifest means it's a relationship. It's considerate. It considers where it's going. The place where it rests speaks back to it. There's a back and forth. They affect each other. It doesn't manifest not islapshus and not in any type of structure, any type of division. Separation, because it transmits everywhere equally. And its transmission, and its transmission is that it's etzem, it transmits and it affects and impacts everywhere equally. So you see, he summed up. He didn't say all the distinctions he mentioned. Basically, here he's essentially spoke about mitzias la'atzmei. That's of course a key. Is it a distinct identity, whereas rotzen is not. Second thing he said here, these are instruments. This is just gili from the etzem. Then there's no division, and there's no islapshus. And its etzem transmits and affects them in every place equally. Because this is essentially the main components. If you want all the ingredients, we spoke around 12 different differences, which we'll create a chart for, so we'll have it easier. But also, I believe that this summing up helps us then go back now to sovev, to what he's going to say now, which is a whole new subject. What is Ohr? As we'll see, all these elements they just summed up in Ratzon, we'll find now in Ohr. So he's now going to go into this. Now he's moving to Lamaila. Because we primarily, even though the end of the last chapter he spoke a little about sovev and how it's Lamaila, and here and there he went to Lamaila a few places. You know what a rotzen is, but generally speaking, the focus was more on the example, on the faculties, on the desire. So now we're moving up, my friends. Lamaila, you ready to go up, Doctor? You ready to go up? You ready for the ride? So to understand the example, this is all the matter. We have to first understand what is Ohr Ein Sof. I got a lump in my stomach. Ohr Ein Sof. As if till now we were some easy ride. Okay, now Ohr Ein Sof. The Yadua, because Ohr Ein Sof is an expression. Ohr Ein Sof is an expression. It begins in the Zohar, and then, of course, in Kisvei Arizal, the divine infinite light. So, how many of us think we know what Ohr Ein Sof is? They told us much about it. We learn about it. So let's see what the Rebbe Rashab has to say. So really, if you think about it, till chapter 53, he got away without speaking about Ohr Ein Sof yet. I mean, he obviously did speak about it, so he spoke about Esesphere, Sagnuzis, and that which is higher, and he's going to go back to that. But clearly, he wants to now go directly, not incidentally. Now he's going to talk head on. What is Ohr Ein Sof? Because it's known, how it's known, the Ohr Ein Sof, Ein HaKavana Ohr Shela Ein Sof, Kim Sha'er Hu Ein Sof. The intention is not that it's Ohr of Ein Sof. Because you could touch Ohr Ein Sof, it's like Ohr HaShemesh, the light of the sun. It's not the sun. You could say Ohr Ein Sof, that the light itself, the energy itself, is not Ein Sof. You could say it's only Ohr Shela Ein Sof. So he says, no, Ki im sha'er hu Ein Sof. It means Ohr Ein Sof, that the Ohr itself is Ein Sof. Ein Sof literally means no end. She'im nemer Ohr Shela Ein Sof, hari Ein Sof kol ya'al atzmos. Because if you say that is the energy of the Ein Sof, then you're saying the Ein Sof goes on atzmos. Va'atzmos ein lechanis rak b'shem Ein Sof, ki im b'shem ein le'tchila. If you talk about atzmos, you don't identify him, you wouldn't call him, you wouldn't describe him with the name Ein Sof. You describe him with a much better name. Ein le'tchila. He has no beginning. Not only has no end. Shezem ma'ili yised al Ein Sof, because that's a greater advantage, a more superior quality, virtue than Ein Sof. The kol she'ein le'tchila memaleh ein le'tichla, because anything that has no beginning automatically, inevitably has no end. And Atzmusis Baruch. Now we're talking about Atzmus.
Something that has no end.
One second, let me finish. Of course. Atzmusis Baruch. And the essence, because Mitzius Matzmusei, his existence comes from within himself, no cause. So therefore he has no beginning, meaning that nothing caused it. Therefore, he's endless. You can have, as we shall speak about Ohr, you can have a pole that's infinitely tall. It casts a shadow that's infinitely long. But the shadow has a beginning, it's the pole. I mean, a pole is not a good example because the pole also has a beginning, but just hypothetically, relatively. So, one thing, Ohr, can come from Ein Sof and has the properties of it, but you can't call Ohr in the Tchila. Because energy and light at the end of the day is that there's a source that's radiating that light. As we shall discuss, that Atzmus has an energy that is Ein Sof. That's what the point here is. So if you want to really describe Atzmus, a much better description, more apt, a more accurate description is Ein Le'Tchila, meaning he's Mitzusim Atzmusei. He has no source. Because really, why should something not have an end or a beginning? Very simple. Because it's not self-made. As soon as I create something, that means I put it there. So it has a beginning, and therefore it also has an end. In most cases. Because we can't create something Ein Sof. So if you want to really describe something, you have to think about its beginning. You don't think about its end. Where did it start from? So it has no start, then of course it has no end. It has a start, most likely has an end. So like when human beings plan something, so we plan something with parameters. We're now launching something, and then there's going to be a point where it's over. The project is over. The deadline has been hit. We come to the end of it.
We say that it's something with no time and space. If you would say it like that, then if you would say no end, it would imply no beginning because it's out of the realm of that type of talk. Well, beginning means source. It doesn't matter whether it's a beginning of time and space, no time and space. As soon as you say something has a source, it means it has a beginning. And it's bound by time and space.
No, let's say no time and space. Outside of time and space, there's a thing that's a source. If you talk purely on qualitative level, you could have one thing that causes the other. It makes no difference. Anyway, this is a big discussion about Kadmei Heder. I don't know if you've ever learned this subject. This has pages. We're going to discuss it all. Because God desires Ohr, so there's a thing called Kadmei Heder. So as soon as something has a source, for all practical purposes, it's called beginning. The fact that it's always been there is because God wanted it to be there. So it's out of that type of time. But source implies beginning.
Exactly.
But source implies beginning. Exactly. Listen to what I just said. Source means it has a beginning. It has a place it comes from. Time is irrelevant here. Time is just purely on a physical plane of how we think. The point here is not time, the point is source. Does something have a source that's causing it to be? We're going to discuss this much more. This is
What you're saying. Something
this is pages now.
But yet be time, no time. Something have a source and still not be in the realm of time.
Makes no difference. As soon as it has a source, it means beginning. Source means beginning, just practically speaking. This is not about time. Source means beginning. It has something with that.
I understand what you're saying.
Huh?
I understand.
If you're talking out of time, you're talking conceptual. Once you're conceptual, there's conceptual time. Conceptual time is source. Chachma and Bina may have come exactly the same time, but Bina is a result of Chachma, not the other way around. Okay. Anyway, we're going to discuss this more at length. Let's see what it says inside. So therefore, he's concluding from this that you can't say Ohr Ein Sof, because if you're saying Ohr Ein Sof, then you're saying that God, you're defining Ein Sof. Then it really would be, you should define Atzmus as Ein Tchila. Therefore, Aval Inyan Ein Sof Ein Mechayev She Lo Yeh Le Tchila. But when something you say something doesn't have an end, it does not compel us to say it has no beginning. That even though it has no conclusion, no end, nevertheless it has a beginning. And now I'm going to explain two ways that you can say this. So bottom line is, if you're really describing Atzmus in the most direct way, you'd say Ein Tchila, not Ein Sof. Because Ein Sof does not mean that it doesn't have a beginning. He's going to explain two ways. And this is one of two ways that you can explain this. Either you can say that this entity that has no end, but has a beginning, is the level that something is revealed from the essence. Shehu kamoya etzem. It's similar to the source in essence. And that's why it has no end. It has no the end, like the essence. But it has a beginning. Because it's only a revelation of the etzem. So that's its beginning. The etzem. The source, where it comes from, is its beginning. That's one way to interpret it. Even a thing that is not at all a revelation of the source, of the source. It could also not have an end. Why? How? Because that's the desire of God. That's what God wants. That this thing should have no end. Like it says in the book called Pelacharimin. Pelacharimin is a Kabbalistic work from the Rameh Mepane. He was an Italian Kabbalist, and he wrote a commentary on the book of the Pardes of Ramak. And it's called Pelacharimin. It's wrote in Chassidus. She's quoting now from Pelacharimin. Pelacharimin, of course, means the what is it called? The layers, the membrane of the pomegranate. Pelach. So here's what he says: the chol kadmin nitzchi, every kadmin. Kadmin means something that has no beginning. Kadmin means something that has always been there. Kol kadmin is nitzchi. Everything that has no beginning is nitzchi, is forever. V'loy kol nitzchi kadmin. But not everything that's forever, that's eternal, has no beginning. That's what he says. Sherabi min nimtzoyim, because there are many of the nimtzoyim, of the things that are in existence, that are eternal, because that's what the God desires. And not one of them, you can say, has no beginning. They all have beginning. So that's the rule, he says.
Can you say that, but if God decided that the things that he wanted nitzking not to be nitzking, they were never nitzking?
But listen, why don't we learn this? He's going to discuss this. Look how many pages. We will discuss this.
It's all there. It's all there now in front of you.
Yeah, right, perfect.
Yeah. U'kamoy b'tzvah maila. Kamoy shetzvah maila kadman be'ish v'tzvah mata kayomim b'min. Kayomim be'ish. Tzvah literally means army. So there's an expression we use: the army above and the army below. The army above means the celestial bodies. The celestial bodies are tzvah maila, and tzvah mata means the creatures below on earth. So the expression goes like this. Let me explain. Tzvah maila kayomim b'min be'ish. The sun, from a Torah point of view, once God planted it, has an eternity to it until whenever. Chazakim kiyemi bottom is the expression. It's as strong like the day we were created, and it's forever. And it's be'ish. It's not because the sun is going to have children that will have children that will have children. So it says, when you say be'ish, it means the individual entity is enduring and lasts. Then we say tzvah mata, meaning the creatures on earth are also enduring, generations upon generations. But it's min. It means in their species endures. When we came to 770, they would tell us that all bachrim are kayomim b'min, except for who is it, Mendelbaum and someone else, kayomim b'ish.
The new bria.
So it's an example of kayom and kosher, right? Okay. So there are some. But min bachrim, continues bachur shevelt. Anyway, so what he's saying here, okay, so we have here a type of enduring element because the desire of God, why God wants it to endure. Like it says, Mereiv Einim v'Amitz Keach Ishlei Nedar. How do we translate that? Mereiv Einim v'Amitz Keach Ishlei Nedar. It means from the intense seed, I guess. V'Amitz Keach, and the power of Amitz, and the intensity and the fortitude of this power, Ishlei Neder, no man shall be missing. I have to look it up in the original verse, but this pasuk is used for
Yeah, continue.
No, I know it's used you could use it in a sexual sense, but
Context. It's used in a negative context. We actually take it.
Okay, so this is, but fine. But what you have here is that there's an intensity that causes something to endure, basically. Ishlei Neder. How is it used in a negative context?
It was the people wanted to get together for Avodah Zarah in Tanakh. We always say Ishlei Neder. We always say like
Right.
we want everybody to be there.
But what's type Mereiv Einim v'Amitz Keach? From the power of Einim is from the word. It's not from the word. Like I thought it has a context that is about the yeah. It's not. Yeah, it's not that. Reishis Eini there is with an aleph.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, the beginning of the seed. That's what I'm saying. It refers to.
First strength, doesn't it?
That's what I meant. Reiv Einim means the strength of.
Yeah,
the first from the intensity. V'Amitz Keach Ishlei Neder. Okay. V'Yeshleimer. Well, look, you have to look at it's possible you have to look up a medrash to see how it's interpreted.
It's very easy if you have
Okay, fine. So, V'Yeshleimer. Anyway, bottom line is that we have now established two ways that you can interpret something as Ein Sof, has no end, but it has a beginning. One is that it's a reflection of the divine. Since the divine has no end, so the reflection also has no end, but it has a beginning. It has a source. Or that fundamentally it's not a reflection of the divine, but God wants it to be enduring. And we can say that were not for the sin of eating from the tree of knowledge, also the creatures on earth would have endured individually, not as a species.
That's the whole thing that we would live forever.
That's why it says that if they had not eaten, they would live forever. What it says, Avata pen yishlich yodim lokach meitzach chaim.
Yeah, this is like a question.
Yeah, it's a question. And it doesn't say Avata pen yishlich lokach meitzach chaim v'chayil elam zeh la'achar achet. What's the question?
No, so we see that.
What's the question? I don't get it.
Yeah, in other words, it's contingent upon the chet.
Right. So that means good.
Before the chet, they would have lived without this. After the chet, they had to eat from the 3 eighths of the cheese. That's pshat.
No, because look.
No.
We're saying that if you eat from the tree of life, then you live forever. So it was contingent upon eating from the tree of life.
So what's the question here? That's
before he said that it wasn't contingent upon that. It was a person when a God created man, he would live forever. It had nothing to do if he ate from the tree of life.
Right.
But the pasuk tells us that if you eat from the tree of life, not the eitz hadas, but eitz hachayim, then you will live forever. So it's like a question.
okay. Well, hold on a second. If I recall, the pasuk says the following: do not eat from the eitz hachayim, don't eat from the eitz hadas. Should you eat from the eitz hadas, you will not live forever.
Right.
No, that's the.
So it says
It says it. That's.
it was forbidden to eat from the
He's
Eitz
quoting
HaChaim
from
after
the
they ate from the Eitz
pasuk.
You only have a kasha. You only have a kasha.
So in other words, there was a I'm just to refresh. So there was a forbid. They could not eat from the eitz hachayim once they ate from the eitz hadas.
Right.
They didn't have to eat from Eitz HaChaim.
Yeah.
No, after you ate from the eitz hadas, God said that now if you
Get
eat
out.
from the eitz hachayim, then you will live forever.
Yeah, so therefore get out.
So that's why he banished it from Gan Eden.
Right. That's what he just said.
Okay, good. Yeah. Fine. Anyway, so he's saying, bottom line is that were not for the chet eitz hadas, they would have lived forever.
Then Nitzchim was cancelled.
So it's a question. Because we said that the way God created the world was that he was to live forever anyway.
What time is it now?
It's 9:30, 9:33.
What it says, and now, should you extend your arm and eat and take from the tree of life and live forever, that's talking about after the chet. So in other words, correct. There's like 2 stages here. Had they been in Gan Eden and not ate from eitz hadas, even without eating from eitz hachayim, they would have lived forever. Because they would have been created, they would have stayed the way they were created. They wouldn't have damaged themselves. Now, the only way to live forever would be to eat from the tree of knowledge. But that's a question itself. Nevertheless, had they eaten from the tree of life, they would have lived forever. But because now they've gotten mixed, within them there's mixed good and evil, God did not want them to no longer live forever, because that would also give endurance and eternity also to the Ra within them. Had they not eaten from the tree of knowledge, they wouldn't have mixed in any Ra, live forever. Now, God did not want them. But I have a question. I thought you could say the other way, Pshat. Once they mixed Tev and Ra, they can't live forever. Not whether God wants or doesn't want them. Even if they ate from the tree of knowledge. How could they live forever?
Not the damage of Chaim.
No, but no, I know that. I extend this to trees. That basic. Yeah. No, you didn't hear what I asked. I'm saying it's not about God's desire. Once you mix Tev and Ra inside you inevitably, you don't need any. Even if you eat from the tree of life, it's not going to help you anymore. Because the Ra within you doesn't let. He here is making it almost as if even if they eaten from the tree, they could trick themselves and live forever. I'm asking a question. You could answer no. The reason they don't any longer can live forever is because they've damaged themselves. It's not because God doesn't want anymore. They can't. Once you have Ra, you're ready. It's like once you've gotten the virus, now you're going to die at some point.
So you have the antidote to the virus, which is Eitz HaChaim.
Is that an antidote? Is tshuva. You can't just by eating a tree. Just eating.
Just by eating the tree, you can have knowledge and maybe.
No. What does that mean? And I'm asking a question. I would say that if you're pure a God's creation, like the sun and the moon, and you did not defy God's will, so fine. So now you continue to live forever. That's inevitable. You don't need an Eitz HaChaim for that. So your answer, you don't need Eitz HaChaim for that. Now that you are so-called contaminated, it doesn't work anymore. So what is the Eitz HaChaim? So you're telling me Eitz HaChaim maybe is like an antidote, maybe it's like a cure. So first of all, why did God create it if He doesn't want them to eat from it? Why not have the cure? Let them cure. Let them.
We're going to get it.
So he's saying because He doesn't want to give Rakim Leilam. So that's what's bothering me. It seems to me that you could. I'm just asking a question as an aside. It seems to me you could have a whole different take on it. That had they not eaten from the tree of knowledge, they would have been pure, live forever. Fine. And then eat Eitz HaChaim for other purposes, whatever. Now that they didn't, now that they contaminated, they basically punctured themselves. They now have contracted illness, so to speak, spiritually. They will die. That's what Pashtus, if you read, before you read about this verse, Chai Le'elam from Eitz HaChaim, that's how you would touch it. I'm just, it looks like it. Okay, fine, I understand that it says it.
No, the question is not.
And clearly God doesn't want them. That's why, in other words, like you said, if they ate, it would work. I'm wondering how it could work. It's like, what do you mean? You're already now damaged goods, so to speak. You're no longer a tzva shemayim. You become mortal. You become human. And just by taking a tree and start eating from it, you can fix that. Anyway, that was maybe it is like a healing thing. Anyway, fine.
It would be worse. It would make things worse. It's not a healing.
The question is.
No, I understand that, but the question is why? Why?
Trapped in
The reason that you don't live forever is because you're no longer aligned with the divine. Think of it like this. You're a channel of divine energy. There's no reason the energy should stop. Simple as that. But as soon as you stop that flow, you disconnected yourself. You no longer have God's energy, so you can't live forever. That's the simplest interpretation of what happened by Eitz Hadas. Now we're saying no. They get a trick. If they stay in Gan Eden, they eat from Eitz HaChaim, they can still live forever. But then Ra will prevail, and God doesn't want that. I'm just trying to understand that second half of the scenario. That's all I'm really asking. That's it. He says it clearly. So I'm not arguing with what he says. I'm trying to understand why that would be the case. Al-Khayra would be the other way. It's like,
is really why we need Eitz HaChaim.
I know Baruchnis. Eitz HaChaim is like pnimi satera. So it's like so called that later in life you can go back and eat it and live forever, but you can start tasting from it and rebuild your life. Eitz HaChaim is really a form of I don't want to say tshuva, but it's a form of re-embracing God. But now, but here it seems almost like a trick, that if you eat it, either you do tshuva and you fix the line of energy, or eating from a tree shouldn't be the solution. And if they're eating from the tree is really tshuva, then why shouldn't they go? Then adrabah, then they're fixing the ra. I'm just trying to understand this thing of how could you eat from a tree, have the ra inside of you, and live forever. Living forever is a result of kedusha. It's not just.
Well, maybe that would expel the ra from them.
So that's good. So then, but then the Gra wouldn't. But he says no. God says, listen. It needs explanation. I'm going to look into it. I just what does that mean? So Adrabah, let them eat from Eitz HaChaim, let them do tshuva, let them work on themselves, let them expel the Ra, and the Ra won't last forever.
He wants the long
And
away.
It's something going on here. The Eitz HaChaim. The bottom line is relevant to our discussion. It's clear. The bottom line is that had they not eaten, it would have lived forever. Now God could not let them stay there, because if they would eat, they would endure. Also, the Ra would endure. It says clear that. I'm just trying to understand the Havon of it. Now, don't get. I know what it says here. He says in the bottom, kayom beish. Obviously, that's a correction. That without the chet, the tzva mata, the armies below, meaning the creatures below, would have prevailed, would have endured. Also, individually, not just species. Now he's explaining. And the way that the heavenly celestial bodies endure individually is like a thing that is nitzchi be'etzem. When you look at them, you don't see as if somebody, he's going to explain, like if somebody's keeping them in motion. You look at them, they have an enduring power. It's, in other words, they've been infused with that type of power. And it's known, he's going to discuss now what you asked, that there's a difference between something that when you keep, when you sustain something that is fundamentally a dying element, something that is eroding. Dover HaNifsid means something that's eroding, something that is naturally deteriorating. La'akim the Dover Nitzchi, to sustaining something that is as enduring or eternal qualities. The Dover HaNifsid hinegam b'shah kiyumehu b'afseidus. Davar nifsad, meaning something that is fundamentally dying, or something that's fundamentally subject to aging, to erosion, to deterioration, and so on. Even when it's being sustained, even when it's alive, when it's kicking, it's fundamentally already in a state of deterioration. So even if you look at someone and you see they're at full strength, meaning that it's consistently deteriorating, consistently eroding. Like it says in Bechai, the Rebbe writes in a footnote, it doesn't say specifically these words in the Bechai, but the Rebbe writes in Tzadik Daled, he writes, I think it's Aleph Chavdal, somewhere in Chumash, where he cites a Bechai. What does it mean? That a child, from the moment it's born, from the hour it's born, it begins to dry up, it begins to age. Yeah, I know, it's very depressing. But you don't develop wrinkles till many years later. But remember, if you don't have those years, you're not going to develop wrinkles. So the Rebbe says in the Ohr in Tzadik Daled that there's no Bechai that says Mamish Zesloshn Hitzeichens to Bechai. I think Bereshis Aleph Chavdaled, I think it is. V'adover hanitzchi hu she'en bo hefsedis klal. That's not a dover. That's a dover shenifsad. So if you look at somebody and they seem all powerful, don't be deceived. It's just a matter of time. And meaning that even right now they're also in that process. So all power, that means a dover hanifsad. But when you talk about dover hanitzchi, a dover nitzchi means an object, an item that does not have any type of deterioration. And that's how it is, and that's how it is. That's how it is, and that's how it is in the heavenly soldiers, the heavenly army, the celestial bodies. While they exist, you don't see any type of weakening. Like it says in Yerushalmi Pasuk Eila Teldus Hashemayim Va'aretz Bi Boram, that these are the Teldus. Oh, these are the Teldus. This is the story, so to speak. Teldus means the offsprings, but here means that Teldus Hashemayim Va'aretz Bi Boram. Interesting, the word Teldus is used as Hashemayim Va'aretz as if they have like. Yeah, the chronology, the narrative. Yeah, Hashemayim Va'aretz Bi Boram. But from when they were created, so it says in Yerushalmi Shem Chazokim Kiyemi Baram. They're as strong as the day they were created. The Rebbe has a whole letter about this in Chelik Yud Likutei Sichos, because some argue, of course, especially science today, that the sun, yes, it may be millions of years, but it's a furnace. It has fuel in it. It doesn't have endless fuel. But it's pretty amazing. Even I asked the scientist, I said, do you know any type of anything that has fuel like that? A car runs out of fuel. A plane runs out of fuel. The ability to have such, so he says there must be something in it that creates fuel as well. It's not just, it's just as big a gas tank.
Fusion. No, but why do you even have to go down that path? You could just say that it's the same intensity. The sun is shining today with the same intensity as it did 6,000 years ago.
Some say not. Some say you can't, maybe it's not discernible, but they say it's weakening.
A small star that's used up most of its energy.
Anyway, I'm just pointing it out. The point is, however,
it's freezing today.
No, it's all
no, it's very, very minute. Look, I'm not getting to debate about this. I'm trying to say is, what I'm trying to say here is that
the moon Hashem diminished it, so it's nitzching because it had some available.
No. Diminished does not mean, but what it has, it's every month the same intensity.
The moon started off like big.
I'm not talking about it. I'm talking about once it's the way it is. That's fine. Who cares how it started? That's not it. But in its glow, it's a flow. The bottom line is that we're learning here that the strength is just as it was when it was created. And all this is only because of the will of God. Because this is not Ohr Ein Sof. Remember, these are creatures. At the end of the day, the sun and the moon is no different than a tree or a human being. It doesn't have fundamental nitzchis in it. It's a creature. But God wanted. On their own, they're creatures like everything else is a creature. So why shouldn't they be subject to the laws of deterioration of all mortal entities? Harihem nifsadim. Being that they're something that were brought into being, they were created, they should be nifsadim, mitzad atzman. They should be on their own. They should be deteriorating. However, there's an outside will, a desire of God's, that this thing should go forever. The same question can be asked about our preservation species. Why would we go forever? Nothing is forever. Because God blessed human beings, He blessed them with the power that they can perpetuate forever. In other words, the word forever to a creature that is mortal, like us, is seemingly is a contradiction. But there's a desire that infuses and gives the world a form of eternity in that sense.
What about all those creatures that became extinct? Dinosaurs, for example, things like that.
Fine, so that's the Ratzon was that should become extinct. That doesn't. But we're talking about that which is there.
No, but we're saying that everything in this earth is kayam and pnimi, and everything that the
it doesn't say that. It doesn't say everything. Where does it say everything? It says that it's format, the kayam b'mid. But God could have decided at some point or something, or human beings could destroy a species. But let's put it. The question is not if something is destroyed. That's natural. The question is how does something endure? That's the chiddush. For this world, erosion and death is a natural process. The question is how does something endure, not how something erodes. Why didn't all the species go? That would be the bigger pella, according to what he's saying here. Basically, bottom line is that there's a ratzon, something is desiring that existence should have an element of eternity to it. What eternity here means, you could also even say, that's why scientists can say that the world is a forever world. That's what they say. They say that had no beginning. Meaning, what do you mean no beginning? There was a big bang, but before that was gas, and before that was more gas. There's no such thing as from something from nothing. There was no nothing. There was energy somewhere. The reason they could say that is because God infused this world with that type of impairment. When you look at it, you don't start saying, oh, you know what, I see that it's 6,000 years. When you look at this table, you know there's a beginning and end. See it. We don't come to the conclusion naturally when you look at the sun had a beginning. They come. The beginning is, of course, the sun did have a beginning, even from a scientific point of view, but before that was energy. The point that I'm making here is that the world has in it an element that on its own, something that's nifsid does die out. The tzva maila don't. Now we go, 1 second. Now he's asking a question. Now it says in the Gemara that the world shall be, God said the world shall be for 6,000 years, and 1,000 v'chad charuv, and one of, it literally means decimation, destruction. Chassidus explains that it means that the world won't be destroyed, it will be that the yesh will go through a transformation, will go to another level, like Shabbos. The koyal kol she'elmus ve'ishtalshlus. This Razal, this statement, goes on the general worlds and this cosmic order. Like we say in the Haftarah, we say it in Bereshis. Like the new heavens and the new earth that I will create, meaning Lasad Lavi. Like it says elsewhere. So we see that existence has a beginning and an end. That's because that is the way God wants it, that it should do that after 6,000 it should cease to be, so therefore nifsadim. And as long as the desire in them is that they should be sustained and they should prevail, they should endure without any deterioration, they then, in that time that they do so, they are preserved, they sustain, they exist, as if they are a nitzchizdik, a thing forever. Let me explain what this means. Because you can ask a question. Right, exactly. That's the point. Because you ask a question, since at the end of 6,000 years we know it's going to get anyway, so then just why is it different than a davar nifsid? Then it's like anything. The answer is because while it's there, God infused it with something. He didn't make it like in 6,000 years you see the flame getting weaker and weaker. That's the point that he's making.
It's it seems like you're defining Nitzki much weaker than you're defining Tchil.
Of course it's weaker. That's not even a question.
A weaker concept.
Absolutely, of course.
Okay, so it's not like apples. It's like apples and oranges.
I don't know what you mean by apples and oranges. He's talking about different levels here. There's only one entity that doesn't have a beginning. That's God. Nothing else has no beginning.
Right.
That's clear. That's not what that he's the point he was making here. This is all a case to explain how Ohr is not Shel Ein Sof, but Ohr itself is Ein Sof. Because if you're saying from, it would be Ein Tchila. God's real description is Ein Tchila. Why? Like he said, the Rameh, the Palach Harimen. There could be Kol Kadman is Nitzchi, but like Kol Nitzchi is Kadman. So he's giving examples of that. Now, Chassidus speaks in Samach Vav, other places, why did God infuse a world that by nature is a dying world with that type of Ein Sof to give us a taste of what Ein Sof looks like? But here's bottom line what he's saying here, is that there is a form of eternity that is not natural to a mortal or physical entity. It's a second way of Ein Sof. The first way of Ein Sof, he said, was it's natural because it's just a flow of the source. The source is Ein Sof, so Ohr Ein Sof is also Ein Sof. Here he's saying it's not a Gili Min Ha'etzem. It's absolutely a creature. And yet they have an eternal element to it, whether it's species or individual. Now he's talking about the individual, and it's as strong as it was the day one, even though that's not natural to the thing, because the thing itself has been infused with eternal power. The fact that after 6,000 years, because that's what God wants. He wants it to be eternal during those 6,000 years, and afterwards he stops. Which also tells you that we all know it's not really eternal, because we're all saying even if it's lasted, it's also even if it lasted forever, it was real Ein Sof. It's also God's will. But he wants it to be 6,000 years. That's the point here. So it's not that the 6,000, like in the case where Davar Nifsid, when something is deteriorating, like a child, the fact that you see aging begins from day one. That's a whole different thing. Here, even if we went on forever and ever, it's still coming from a higher power that's not the object itself. The sun itself, the moon itself doesn't have eternal power. Someone had to put it there in that way. Bottom line is we have a second example of Ein Sof, but Yesh Tchila.
We're only 232 years away from that.
Yeah, but Mashiach, you learn Chassidus, the world is going to be a beautiful world. Shemaim Chadoshim. It's just a different reality. Don't worry about it. You're not.
It's not any second.
I'm not worried about that at all. I wanted to say one more thing. What did I want to say?
Shabbos is 18 minutes before. It's Shkia.
And you taste the food before.
It's very few years away.
Yeah, you taste the food before.
We started Mincha Yedera this year.
Yeah.
This year's Mincha Yedera.
There's two shittas how you interpret the day. The 12 hours, 24 hours, yeah. The Rebbe has in the Sikh about it. In Tov Shenun, all the calculations he made.
Tov Shenun was midday.
Exactly, it was, yeah. According to some, others it was like 3/4. Like Plag Mincha or something.
Whether you use 1,000 years or 2,000 years.
No, depends whether you count in 1,000 years as 24 hours or 12 hours. Day and day and night.
That's what I said.
Oh, that.
I said 1,000 years or 2,000 years, 24 hours. That's the same question you used.
I don't know what you mean by 2,000.
If 1,000 years is 12 hours, 2,000 years.
No, it's not. It's not counted. They don't count every year. Every day is only the day. You don't count it to other hours.
Okay.
6 days. So. There's a similar concept in halacha. That was, we say Pi Hashem Yachna, Pi Hashem Yusu, Kaman Dekvi Lo Dami, which means that when they rested in the 42 journeys in the wilderness, so even if it was just for a day, some places they rested for 18 years, 19 years, but some places it was just short. So even when they rested, as if they were going to be there forever. And then they moved. That was also so. The Gemara brings that because it was a Pi Hashem, because God said, "Here's where you stop. Here's where you go." So a stop has in it a kvir. It's like nitzchis. Even though they know that they're on their way somewhere. The Rebbe Friedrich Rebbe brought this. The Rebbe brings it the concept of Mashiach. That on one hand we said any second Mashiach is going to come. And then we say, build moistus. Why are we renting? Why are you creating permanent? So the Rebbe says, because while we're there, you have to do it as if you're there completely. And a second later, it's a contradiction, so by idin inam noise, it's a contradiction.
But they didn't know how long it was going to be anyway.
Yeah,
they didn't know how long it was going to be each time.
Exactly, but the point is, it's like a pnimi. When you're there completely. Even though, you could say, 1 second, we're about to move, so let me not wash the dishes, I'm going to make them dirty anyway, so, that type of male attitude.
Yeah, so many people borrowed and then
Okay, so let's continue now. Is this called rain?
Yeah, it's supposed to be big storm today.
It's supposed to be massive late in the afternoon. Like hail size of golf balls.
Remember a few years ago there was weird, and you looked outside and I couldn't believe it. Just for seconds because it melted so quickly, but it was like I never saw anything like that. Like real.
Even rainbows. The last couple of weeks there was a couple of rainbows over
You mean that God is trying to? A flood is supposed to come and.
Something going on. It was very unusual.
Okay. The calls Okay. Kol zeh shaharotzen behem shiyu b'kiyumam b'chliyav says hariyu kiyum kamei dover hanitzchi. Kol zman. Okay. So from all this we just described two ways of Ein Sof, but yesh tchila, no end but has a beginning. Kol zeh. I'm sorry, not the kol zman. Harishef shaliyah she'ein lei sof af sheyesh lei tchila. So it's possible. There's no end, but it has a beginning. Tell me he's going to have to come back because I'm here. Tell me.
You can come back.
I can't stop now because I'm in the middle of this.
11.
11.
So we see from this that it's possible there should be no end, even though it has a beginning. On the other hand, something that has no beginning naturally also has no end. So now he goes back to his argument. V'im kain, and if that's the case, if the intention was that's Ohr of that Ein Sof is referring to Atzmus, should have then said it has no beginning. So that's proof number one that Ein Sof, when you say Ein Sof, you don't mean Ohr Shel Ein Sof, you don't say energy of the Ein Sof, you say energy that is Ein Sof, that is infinite.
That is created by Ein Sof.
He doesn't say that. We're going to learn. This is a whole Maimorim. You have to have patience. He's going to discuss it. It's step by step. If the Maimer ended here and he's not discussing, we'd have to speculate. I don't want to guess. He's going to say all this specifically. You asked before about something that dies. That's what he's coming to discuss. So we see from this that it can have no end but have a beginning, but everything that has a beginning must have an end, inevitably. So therefore, if the intention was Atzmus, he should have said Va'oid. Another reason he's going to explain that he can't say it's Ohr Shel Ein Sof, that it's energy of the infinite. Va'oid, and additionally, the Al Atzmus le'yitakalem ekina Ein Sof. On Atzmus, on the essence, you cannot describe the essence with a kinui, with a name, with a description, with an identification that it's Ein Sof. The Pirushi hu she'Ein Sof is pashtuse, because when you say something is Ein Sof, you're saying, what are you saying? You're saying that it has no end in its extension, in its expansion. Vari Atzmus eine b'chinas is pashtus. Atzmus, essence, doesn't extend altogether. Ein Sof, the meaning means that something is extending, and it extends Ein Sof without an end, like infinity. It doesn't go only till here, it goes all the way. Atzmus is not an extender. Atzmus is not extension. Atzmus is an atzmi. An atzmi is just what it is. It's not defined by extension, by spreading out, by so on. It's not in the form of extension. The kol atzmi einem mispashet. There's a rule that an atzmi does not extend itself. Let's define what atzmi. Atzmi means something that is just real because it's real. Something like he said before, mitziyuse matzmuse. Its existence comes from within itself. Why would you? Ein Sof is a suggestion, is saying something has a description that it extends. Ein Sof, endless. You can almost say it's also relative. Why do we call something Ein Sof? Because we have a Sof, we have an end. So we say, there are things that have no end. To call that a God, on the essence of God, is a limitation, somewhat confining him. Even the Ein Sof part. Ela kavona be'ein sof ela Ohr. So now he continues. It goes back to what he began. Only the intention of the word Ein Sof is referring to the Ohr, the energy, the light. That's what Ein Sof means. The Ohr yesh le'tchila. Ohr, energy, has a beginning. What's the beginning? Shehu ha'atzmi. The atzmi is its beginning, the essence and the source of it. Rak she'ein le'sof, but it has no end. Liyosei b'chinas gili ha'etzem shekamoy ha'etzem. Being that it's a revelation of the essence, and the essence, so it's similar to the essence in that sense that it continues on. So he is not saying here that Atzmus does not have an end. He's just saying you can't call Atzmus endless. Obviously, Atzmus goes on and on and on, but it's not a definition. Like if you were to say, if I were to describe you and say, you know what, since you're a carpenter, you are a carpenter. That's your identity. That's an insult. You are a carpenter is part of what you do, maybe one of your skills, but it's not your identity. The fact that you do it, because you're able to do that, you're able to do a lot of things. To say Ohr Ein Sof and say Ohr Shel Ein Sof, we're defining God as Ein Sof. Yeah, of course, God has Ein Sof possibility, yeah. But to define him as such, an atzmi is not defined by his extension, about how Ein Sof he is. If you say on a sun or a moon that they have nitzchis, that's a virtue. Because they are fundamentally defined. Their structures, their existences, they have a beginning, they were put here. And you're saying a quality. Actually, it's a virtue. It's actually a compliment. Ein Sof. If you say Ein Sof and Atzmus, it's actually an insult. Because you're confining him. That he has Ein Sof, yes. Now, Ohr, he's saying, but you could say an Ohr Ein Sof. There, absolutely, because Ohr is not Atzmus. Ohr is not the Etzem, it has a beginning. You're saying Ohr Ein Sof, because it's reflecting its source, so it has a virtue that comes from the source. Again, the source is not defined by this virtue. Ohr can be defined by it, and it's considered to be a compliment. That would be a good description. So essentially, he's proving that the word Ohr Ein Sof means the Ohr itself is Ein Sof, and that's its virtue. And not the Ohr Shel Ein Sof, because two reasons it can be Ohr Shel Ein Sof, because number one, Atzmus, the better description would be Ein Tchila, and number two, Ein Sof is not a quality that contribute to him and give him that type of title. In truth, even Ein Tchila is not the title. But if you're already giving a title, Ein Tchila is a better title than Ein Sof. Ein Tchila would also not be a title for the same reason. He didn't say that here, but just to point that out. Now, why is this so important to emphasize? That's another story. Why is it so important to emphasize? I would say, he's probably going to explain it, but I think the point is because he wants to show in the interface between existence and the divine, he's establishing a new level now. It's called Ohr. To connect with Atzmus itself for existence like ours, which is fundamentally hefsedim, fundamentally deteriorating, or even if it's if it has nitzchis, it's because of something else, not because of itself. The question is, how could something that is by definition mortal connect to something immortal? And even beyond immortal, because we can't even call God immortal, because immortal would be like Ein Sof. So Ohr is going to be the step where you have God's expression like Rotzen. So you have something of God. I'm not saying it's Atzmus yet. Atzmus is another story, but you at least have something that is its personality captures God's infinite possibilities.
When you say the Ohr, it means God's love.
another interface.
No, that's interface. The interface with Atzmus, if you remember, he already said that the Yesh has elements and the taste of Mitzusim Atzmusei and Bilti Mitzias Nimtz at the end of chapter 49.
Now, the way we're talking about.
Chapter 49. Okay. What?
When you say it's very abstract. You mean God's love, God's will, God's.
No. Hold on a second.
Connect God, he's saying through his life, through the.
Yeah. Well,
something that emerges from him, which is one of the.
No.
Spheres.
The spheres are clearly a level that God already is envisioning the structure. Ohr Ein Sof is a level that just reveals the divine in its full glory. That's the whole point he's making here. Later he's going to discuss more details about it.
So we can't connect to that because that's
We can. We will connect to that. That's what he's.
after we go through the.
After, and there's through, like he said, through mitzvahs, example. There are ways to connect to it. And it's part of the process. Look, it's all a big picture here. The point I just giving a little taste of why we really need to, why is it so important to establish this? Because you want to have something that has divine personality, but is not essence yet. Just like Atzilus. What's Atzilus? He said Atzilus, without Atzilus we wouldn't know God, we wouldn't feel God. Because Atzilus is a structure that's divine. Here it's just going a step earlier. It's not structure yet, but now we have divine presence. I'll put it to you this way. Without Ohr, you have built Mitzias Nimtza. An entity of Atzmus that's built in Mispashas, you can't even talk about identification with it. Now, we're going to talk about how you connect to that, but we're talking of obviously first the lower levels here that we're discussing here. So that's Ohr. And also the energy, the light, is in a form of extension, of expression.
It's hulu, or that's the back of the sentence.
I don't know what the V'gam is not as a follow. Let me read it. Let's see. V'gam, I think it's not. V'gam is pashtus. The shaykh lemer of Ein Sof is pashtuse. He's saying an additional. So first of all, he said two things. Remember, he said that you can't call Atzmus Ein Sof because it's Ein Tchila. You can't call him Ein Sof because you can't describe him as such. But you could say it on Ohr, because Ohr does have a beginning. So now we have an entity, and this entity is being described as having no end. So it's as opposed to Atzmus, which would be Ein Tchila. Now he's saying the second aspect. You can't call Atzmus Ein Sof because Atzmus does not mispashit. But Ohr is. Atzmus doesn't extend. Gamma Ohr is pashtus. Ohr does extend. Ohr is not an Atzmi. It does extend. It does express itself. And the Shaykh Lemer love Ein Sof is and so you're capable of saying on it, extending forever. He said before, you can't say Ein Sof is pashtus and Atzmus, but you could say it now and Ohr. So basically, Ohr solves the problem. If you would say it's Ohr Shel Ein Sof, you have two problems. If you say Ohr Ein Sof, the Ohr itself is Ein Sof, both problems are resolved. It's already established now that Ohr itself is Ein Sof. Now it's vital because if Ohr was not Ein Sof, we essentially would not have an expression level in existence, anything that carries Ein Sof to us. You want to put it even better? The Ratzon Atzmus, the divine desire to make that there should be, that this existence should have elements that are enduring, is because Ohr is Ein Sof. If Ohr was not Ein Sof, it would be a complete miracle. How God can put into a material world a type of enduring, sustaining element.
I'm bothered by these words, Shekamaya.
That's the Pashat. He kept saying it before. Look from the beginning.
Well,
look at the first way.
These two words.
I know. Why don't you look at the first of the two panim? Why is something? Yesh Litchi, there says two ways that something could be Ein Sof.
Yeah.
One. Look at the bottom of page. So read. Yeah. Look, the exactly the same word. Shahu. Exactly the same words he's using here. That's what he means. Because he wants to say Ohr is like the first one. Yeah. Anyway. Now he starts another subplot within a subplot. Now we've established Ohr is Ein Sof. To understand this, because now the question that's on the table is, how does Ohr assume such a property? since it has no beginning, how did it become Ein Sof? So of course we're going to have to just understand that Eir has bittul, and it's all it is a reflection of its source. So he says to understand this we have to preface HaHefesh ben Eir l'Shefa. The difference between Eir and Shefa. Eir means light or energy. Shefa means a transmission. So the two ways that we use the word, you could say hashpa is from the word Shefa. Right. Eir is also a transmission. So what's the distinction between these two transmissions? And how he's going to say the language part. The Mukabalim, the Kabbalists, primarily use the word Eir, light. And the Chokrim, the philosophers, primarily use the word Shefa. The Tzemach Tzedek has a maimer, actually right here, Eir Teira in Yonim, where he brings from Eitz Chaim, he asks a question that, what do you mean, why could you say this? Because this is a language from the Alter Rebbe. But you see places in Eitz Chaim and Kabbalah that Shefa is used. It's a whole discussion in Eir Teira about this, which should be noted in this section here. But the statement is that Kabbalah generally uses Eir and Churkim Shefa. So the question is why? What's the difference? The difference between them is the Shefa Meira Tashpahi Eze Muhus Dover. Remember, very similar to the words you used before about Keiches, faculties. That's a Metzias Dover. Shefa reflects that the transmission has some type of Muhus Dover. There's something that's being transmitted, some type of substance. Shenishpa min hamashpia lemekabel, that's being transmitted from the transmitter to the recipient. When we say the transmission of charity, the giving of charity from a wealthy person to a pauper, there's something that's being transmitted, that's being nishpa, being transmitted v'nimshach and extended, money or whatever. The or the extension of the drawing of the transmission of water from one place to another. Shefa. Yeah, Shefa Yamim. Where we say on this the expression Shefa. Shefa Yamim means the flow of oceans, of seas. Yeah. So you use a shifas mayim. Another expression. Twice. These are two different expressions. Because there's something of substance. It's not just the effects of the water. The water itself is actually flowing from here to there. Shefa. Because it's of substance, that's why this type of transmission affects a change and actually a weakening, a diminishing of the mashpia, of the transmitter. Like water that flows. If it flows elsewhere, it means there's less of it in its original place. It's diminished.
It must be in a couple. It's not.
He's not finished. We're going to discuss this.
The physical aspect of it.
And you just mentioned that as an example. So.
Well, he said as an example. Let's read, and we'll get to that.
Really?
The same things with the faculties of the soul. Like when you throw, the power of throwing. When you throw a stone above, throw a stone up. The power that you had in your arm has now been separated from you because it's now within the stone. It's carrying the stone. You don't need to have your hand touching the stone the whole time. Something has been imparted that has substance. Not substance in a physical sense, but power. And it will run out, of course. So something was separated from the power of the arm, manifests in the stone, and carries it above. Because throwing is after the stone leaves his hand. So what's separated and divided itself from the essence of the power in the arm on the stone that now surrounds it. This power has now so-called surrounded. He says in Yiddish, like completely. This stone is now for that moment, a flying stone, meaning the power of your arm has now changed the nature of the stone for the while that is going to be flying. surrounds it from all sides. And through that it carries it above. And when that power subsides, and what's the word? And ends, not ends, subsides, and nichla, burns out basically, extinguishes. Here obviously it's not extinguishing, but it means that no longer there, then the power weakens.
It's used up.
It's used up, exactly. The stone will then fall below. This power is in a form of islapshus, because actually affecting the stone, both from the perspective of the thrower and from the perspective of the object that's being thrown. The thrower has to manifest himself. He has to invest himself. You can't just. It's not just he wills it. He needs effort. He needs effort. He needs to invest himself to throw the stone. Because it's not going to be thrown by its own. And also, another element where you see investment, because while he's throwing it, he can't do something else. That's what he's doing at that moment. We're not talking about chewing gum. He means obviously with that hand and that moment the power. And that's from the perspective of the thrower. And also in the perspective of the object of being thrown. And also the effect on the object that is being thrown, it's also islapshus boy, that it manifests within it. Because it actually causes the stone to fly. It's not just some type of a esoteric event here. It affects something new in the stone. And that is that the stone should travel upward against its nature, antithetical to its nature. The nature of the stone is to fall below. In order to cause this innovation, this new element, it doesn't happen automatically. It only happens because there's something they're connecting. In other words, the power has to speak to the stone. Try to throw, for example, fire. Or not fire. Try to throw air. You can't throw air. So here you have, basically, from the perspective of the thrower and the perspective of the thing being thrown, a type of islapshus. There's something of substance is taking place here. And he proved that. That you're invested in it, you have to throw it, you can't do something else. And here causing the stone to actually go against its nature for this while. Just to answer the question, you asked the question about hashpah. You give the example mayim, that when something of substance is going, so there's less, it's diminished in its source. The fact that we have example madlik ner mener, that you can light one flame from another and the original flame does not get diminished, or that you can teach ideas to someone and the teacher does not get diminished, that's an exception. And maybe that's an element of Ohr actually. But that doesn't take away that we do have examples of Shefa. The example he gave of Shefa, of the teacher, he wanted to show that there's something of substance. In that example, the idea that it's diminished doesn't apply. But it's still a substance thing.
Would use it as an example.
Huh? Because it's an example of a transmitted of an idea. Because Ohr is it's example. He's giving many different examples of.
Maybe the teacher gets tired. He's not completely.
I don't know. He didn't say that here, but the point is that it is an example of he wants to give different examples of transmission of something of substance. That's basically what he wants to do. But the thing that Shefa that does apply, that there is islapshus. When a teacher teaches, he has to apply himself. So even more than throwing a stone, actually, you have to apply yourself. It's just that wisdom's nature is such that wisdom doesn't get diminished, because wisdom is not a physical thing. It's not like you have 5 inches of wisdom, you give away 4, you only have 1 left. That type of thing. Wisdom is by nature
You see that with a candle, it's a light.
I said madlik ne'emeneh, that's the medrash mashal.
But that is physical and not physical at the same time.
That's another, but that doesn't contradict. So he's just, it's just different examples.
It could be a combination of Ohr and Shefa.
Probably, yeah. And I think he may discuss that, I don't know here, but elsewhere. And also, you could argue, like you said, tired, but there's also another element. While the teacher is teaching, there's a change in him. In Ohr, there will be no change. There's a change when he's teaching. It changes his mind. And he also receives back from the students, so it affects him as that way. other words, there's a Shefa element going on here. The diminishing part is the only thing that's lacking in that particular example. Okay. So all this we're discussing in Ohr and Shefa. So he began with Shefa. The bottom line, Shefa shows a transmission of something. He went through all of this, and it's a transmission. He established that it's a transmission of a substance. It's a transmission that weakens, diminishes what comes from the source, because it's substance. Then what he has now is that it's also an investment. The koiches, that you are investing, you're giving something of your energy into this object, and the object is being affected by that energy. So there's a substance there also going on. As we'll speak about Ohr, for example, if you think about the sunlight, the sun just shines. The sun is not investing in causing a stone to fly, for example. Even if it warms the earth, it's a byproduct, not because the light is that. He'll discuss this. I'm just giving contrast here. So he says, "Ukomoikein."
But you have gravity.
He doesn't bring that. I know. I didn't want to refer because gravity.
All the works is put on the muscle of mind.
Well, gravity is a whole subject matter of its own to be discussed. Koach HaMeshicha. The Alter Rebbe brings the famous Tavkuf Samach Beis. It's cited in Hayom Yom. Why people don't fall off on Earth on the other side of the world. So he says the scientists say it's because they come from the Earth. You say them off, basically alluding to gravity. And he says because the world is like igulim. The igulim, so there's no milo matter. I've thought about this a lot. I don't know if it's a contradiction that we don't believe in gravity. You could say we have gravity, but there's still that question is, why is there gravity? Why do some bodies exert gravity and others don't? Like, on the moon there's less gravity. So there's all kinds of scientific theories for that. And there's places of zero gravity. Not every body creates gravity. There are elements.
Gravity starts lower than
So you could argue that gravity is a result of the igulim. So the Alter Rebbe is going deeper. He's explaining because there's igulim, so there's a thing that equalizes, and that's why it all depends on it. It's not really a discussion right now. Here just bottom line, a stone fell before Newton discovered gravity. Also, whatever the reason was. So this mashal would have worked even without the word gravity. Gravity just explains why something falls, but something falls, that's for sure. Point is, stones don't fly, and that's the thing. So now the nimshal, you're going to go like this. So nista bisam dal derech zel memaleh hafez ben yilva yesh mayin. Now because the similar to this is above the difference between ilav olol, which means cause and effect, and yesh mayin, and creating something new. The ilav olol yesh efen shemehis ha'ila ba olol b'derech memaleh. In cause and effect, there's one of the ways in cause and effect is that when the cause extends itself, naturally the effect just results from that, inevitably or naturally or without effort. Like when we say about Chochmah, this is from a Zohar, Tikkun Zohar, I think. That when that wisdom extends, and from it comes out bina, almost like a natural flow. You could say above that this is how it is by meichin and midas, intellect and emotions, even in their external dimension. And a person below, in the level of the pnimi, he's alluding to something here. Before we spoke about meichin and midas, I think he's alluding what he said earlier to. Yeah, I got it. I think he's alluding to what he said earlier. I have to look it up, but For example, by us, moichin and midas, when you contemplate something, it doesn't naturally just result in an emotion. In the pnimi, it could. Remember, you spoke about the person who's be'etzem kei chachmose, is atzmi, seichel atzmi. So then, the midas are just a natural, because he's on a completely different level. So below, it's only a pnimis dike moichin that really brings the midas. Above, even on a chetzenius level, like in Atzilus, there's no bechira there, there's no yetzer hara that's stopping it. So the flow of moichin naturally goes to midas. That's the yesh lema. It's an interesting thought. You understand? So the idea that what we have, that moichin doesn't always come into midas, and Atzilus that doesn't exist. Atzilus works the way it's supposed to work. So moichin naturally follows, even the chetzenius. Anyway, just an example of something flow. Ukamay b'moichin and midas b'chinas ha'pnimius v'agadlus shalahem shamidas and be'erech ha'meichin. Like when intelligence and midas and emotions, we spoke earlier, when they become more internal and they become more mature. When a child, the midas obviously are just wild, untamed emotions. But as one matures and grows, the midas, the emotions become more commensurate to the intelligence. So when you're in that state of affairs, when there's that type of maturity, so as when you intelligently conceive of something, from that naturally, b'derech memaleh, automatically will flow out certain feelings. What's the Maimer Azal? Let me remember. I don't remember the exact language, but it says basically there is that a person, something he's not in control of himself, except if he's a chacham meiv midaite. In other words, he's establishing here that when you have that type of maturity,
he's about to net there at the age of 12.
Maybe, yeah.
The age of 12 on the Ramitzvah.
Yeah, maybe that's it. But in other words,
it's also talking about selling the property from inheritance.
Yerish ben Nichse Ovav? Ben Asim Shana?
Yeah.
So that he referred to earlier. He referred to that earlier. Yeah, so then basically, bottom line he's trying to say is here, he's giving an example of ilah v'olol, where you have the form where the ilah, the cause, you see many situations you have a cause and it doesn't bring an effect, or you need a lot of work. But he's saying here, in a mature situation, meichin midas, meichin a cause, a person who's a serious person, he thinks about something, is going to bring to some type of emotional growth. Right. But when you create something, that's not automatic. Remember, he said in ilah v'olol, this is one eifin. Not all cause and effects are this way, because there's a cause and effect where you need effort. Okay, but yesh ma'ayin, for sure it's not b'derech memaleh. For sure not in an automatic. How would you translate b'derech memaleh? Automatic, natural, automatic. B'derech memaleh. Yeah. You need the slapshus, the manifestation of the ayin aliki to create the yesh. He's using an example like this throwing of the stone. The reason being, because ayin and yesh are opposites. It's not going to become a yesh if there's no one pushing it to become that. You need an effort. As you know, the difference between nivru, lebara is an act of creation. Nivru means it was created. The nivru she'asa barach b'derech memaleh she'nasa b'derech memaleh. When you say nivru, means it happened automatically. Something came into creation. Ve'ein ze b'chinas yesh adayin. You can't yet call that a yesh yet. You can't yet call that a true matter. Shezeu ha'isavus k'mo shu m'shem havaya. That's the isavus, the creation that comes from havaya. So havaya has the power, nivru, from God, emerges, will created things, but you don't have a yesh yet. You just have, God has the power to create. Not nivru. When it comes to actually creating the substance of yesh, it says bara alakim. God created heaven and earth. Manifesting the kayach hapel, the power of the creator, banifel, in the thing that is created. He's qualifying only that this manifestation is not literally internal. The inyan hayis slapshus hu shabab b'gili mamish, because true manifestation, as we spoke before with the faculties, is when it comes very revealed. If by creating something, the power of the Creator would have been mamish revealed in the creation, then the creation would have been commensurate to the Creator. And yesh mayin is such that the yesh does not sense its Creator. It's like there's a quantum leap between the two. So he's just qualifying that the slapshus here, is not like, for example, you throw a stone, the slapshus is you and the stone. There's a connection. You see the connection. Yesh mayin is a type of big jump, but it still requires an effort. It's just different forms of. He's describing different relationships type of things. So we have here several things. We started with shefa. It's a transmission of something of substance, requires investment. He's now going and saying this investment is also lamayla, that's yesh mayin as opposed to ilavol. Ilavol, you have the cause automatically extends into the result. You don't need extra effort. Yesh mayin extends extra effort, but now he's qualifying it needs extra effort, but it's not his slapshus quite like something that's proportionate to each other. It's a slapshus that requires effort, but it's not mamish because they remain two different worlds.
The result is a consequence of the cause.
Yeah. Okay, consequence, but inevitable consequence or natural consequence, because every effect is a consequence. Yeah. Good. So we have different relationships going on here. That's really all that he's saying here. It's all to explain what shefa is. Nevertheless, there is slapshus. There has to be that the poil. In other words, just like the hand throws the stone, existence has an energy within it that's making it be. The question is whether that energy is so-called, is there a close relationship? It's not kiruv, it's ein arech, but there is a relationship. Think of it this way, if you had the power, we're not that, God has the power. Imagine God is able to throw a stone from a distance where nobody can see, but the stone is flying. So you know there's a force, but you don't know where it came from. So yesh mayin is like that. You see existence, so know somebody put it here. Like you see what he said before about nitzchis. You see the sun is burning, it's like the day it was created. But you don't see a hand throwing a stone. Even if you don't see the hand, you'd know. The sun, if there was some type of source that's giving it fuel somewhere, but it's not b'derech kiruv. It's a form of yesh mayin. I'm not saying that. So yesh mayin is the same impact that hand has on stone is the impact that ayin has on yesh. But the way they relate is that the ayin is be'eshlei be'erechtet, where with the stone it's a kiruv going on. Okay. Okay, fine. So it's still slapshus. This is one of the wonders in the inyan of creation ex nihilo from nothing. This is one of the wonders. That the ayin alaki is definitely giving power because existence doesn't have any power to be on its own. And it manifests in the yesh. And causes a ischatros, like the stone. Stone on its own is inanimate. So you have to say that the hand is going into it and causing it for this moment to fly. Existence on its own would not be. So you have to say if it exists, something is in it and causing a ischatros, that it should be of substance. This is even before kiyum nitzchi. Just the fact that it exists. Nevertheless, that's the wonder. At the same time, imagine the stone flying and no one knows how it's flying. Nevertheless, it's concealed and hidden from it. That the yesh, which is so benefiting, its all existence is coming from the source, is clueless. Doesn't feel, doesn't sense.
If it sense it, it wouldn't be able to be a yesh.
Correct. Yeah. The yesh should feel the way it came into being. So it's like something. It's like it's almost like a parent that the child doesn't know that you orchestrated something. They think that they're on their own, but the truth is you did. So that's a pella because it's like the effect is there, but you don't. But the person who's benefiting has no clue, cannot sense how I came into being. Like that classic, that two people when a guy's walking in the. You know, when the person is walking on the beach, you have these two sets of footsteps, and then suddenly one step. Whenever we suffered, there was difficulty. There's only one step of footsteps. So the lady asked God, why? You know, God walked side by side with him all the time. When it came to suffering, pain, why did you leave me? He said, I didn't leave you, I carried you. Because the only footsteps are God's footsteps, and He's carrying you. So we don't know that. You know, when God carries, you don't know that He's carrying you. I can't finish him. Yeah. But Kamoy can be in Hazarika Shekeh. Going back now to the. Right. It means, look where it's discussed later, chapter 256 and chapter 396. What time do we have? Okay. The same thing is in the power of throwing. In throwing, in the power of movement of the arm, and all this is to explain that Islapshus is manifest in the stone. It causes it to affect it, but it's concealed. Oh, he is comparing it. And all this is because something of the power of the arm manifested in it. Was nimshach, transmitted into it. That's why there's a manifestation, a slapshus, from the perspective of the thrower, which means the haynu shenitvis b'zeh. He is involved in it. Involved is a good word here. And he can't do something else at the time. And because this type of act is one to cause something, he wants to cause something, he wants to cause it to fly, the stone. He wants it to throw it. Therefore, the action in the object of banifl, in the object of what is being done here, in the effect, Higamkin is also in a form of manifestation of slapshus, involvement. Throwing is generally the lowest power within the power of movement. Because, for example, when you draw and use your fingers to draw something, it's far more superior than throwing a stone. And when you're throwing, you're doing something completely separate of you. You know, if you're using your intelligence to write a book or to draw, so you're davar anivdil completely. There's no connection to him.
And sight comes as something that somehow has no connection to him.
Fine. And so it has no connection. You're throwing a stone. What does it have to do with you, the stone? So there's ein arech. I correct myself. Before I was trying to distinguish that the throwing the stone, there is a kiruv, because you sense it. But it's also, but there is a concealment, because there's two separate entities, the person and the stone. It's the lowest faculty, and the thing is completely outside of you. That's why the manifestation is completely concealed. However, now will work in any type of skill, craft, like drawing, and other things similar. It's more discernible. You can more recognize the slapshus, the involvement. The memaleh satzir, in the work of drawing, art, the revelation of the power of movement and its commitment and its involvement in the process is increasingly apparent. And also the action is more committed, is more manifest. Because there's a closer relationship between you and the art that you create than you and the stone you throw. Now, a parenthesis, like it's known, that a reshim, an impression, remains from the creator to the thing that he creates, to the object of creation. As is known about the Magid, he was able to recognize in a container, in a vessel. Someone had built a vessel, a type of an instrument. In an instrument, he was able to see the nature. That person was blind in one eye. He's able to see it in the object. 1 second. This is possible much more in the work, the crafting of let's say clay making. He's not saying clay, but making an instrument, building of an instrument, similarly, than throwing. When you see someone a stone throwing, you can't know anything about the person who threw the stone. Anyone could have thrown it. And when you see a container, you see art. The art has a wisdom in it that tells you about the person who created the art.
There are guys that can see a pitch thrown and know who threw it. I mean, that's he just take it as a primitive throwing the stone.
With all due respect, you're giving an exception.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is that this is not in every case.
Right.
That's all you're saying. But 95%, if you saw a stone flying, you would not know if a pitcher threw it, if a javelin thrower threw it, if God threw it, and so on. You're talking about a particular. First of all, I would say a sport is not koyach hazrika. He's throwing. The law is pure just throwing. You're talking about an artistic way of throwing, because there's an art in it. So it's not quite art. You're already talking not just No, I'm just saying that doesn't contradict.
Yeah, I know. You said it's a skill also.
That's the point. The more skill, obviously, the more you recognize. The point again, he's explaining relationships here. All this is coming to explain Ohr, of course, and this is still not even getting there. All this is coming to explain now Shefa. Shefa is manifestation. There's some type of investment involved. If you think about it, this is very reminiscent of what he just spoke about koiches as opposed to Ratzon. Ratzon doesn't make any effort. Ratzon just does what it does. Right. Here, you could see great sense. The Shefa is similar to koiches. Meaning, as soon as something is more invested in something, it's less of it's far away from its source, so to speak. So now, he just explained that this whole thing with this throwing of the stone, the similarity yesh ma'ayin, as opposed to il v'ol. Il v'ol, where he just extends, throwing a stone requires investment, and it's concealed from the stone. And now he's saying there are things, however, where you see much more the relationship between the creator and the thing that's being created. And he said with the Magid, who was able to recognize. This is possible more in a skill, in a craft, of shaping, let's say, building an instrument, and similarly, much more than when you throw something. Why? Because there's a relationship. Now, there's a proportionate, there's a ratio, there's a proportionate relationship between these two. Which it has within it a more revelation and more of a manifestation, more of a connection. Another proof, it says a person cares, is concerned about his actions. So that means there's a relationship between him and what he does. So it's an example of that yisachshus, that it's not just two distant things. Throwing a stone, you could also, it's chas ha'mais yadav, not necessarily. He threw a stone. Now, unless he did it for a very profound reason. But here, when a person builds something, crafts something, you care, so you're invested in it. You're invested in it, there's more revelation. It's just qualifying the relationship between the poel and the pu'ula in the shefa. And the difference is in the gasus, in the grubkeit, in the crassness, and dakus, and the subtlety. When the object, the davar aniflu, the product of what you're creating, is a crass thing, ain't his galus bezeh kol kach. There's not that much revelation in it. And the manifestation in the act is more concealed. And something that's more subtle, more refined. There's more revelation hapoel. There's more revelation of the creator, the composer. And the manifestation is also more revealed. Parentheses, the madregas haruchim shushabah banifel begili behergish yeser. In spiritual levels, it means that revelation is more revealed and more sensed by the object. So yesh ma'ayin doesn't sense, because a yesh is a real crass thing. Throwing a stone doesn't sense. An artistic thing does. So you have an example of different types of yeshefa here. Kitzur. Summary. Yuvayr in Ayin Sof, he explained the idea of an infinite divine light. The koyal is going on the energy. Atmos has no beginning. Memaleh in sovev, the memaleh has no end. The Ayin Sof yachali is gam kisheyesh leitchila. Something without end could also be can also have a beginning. Like we also find it in existence in the things, in the creations, that the desire of the Creator that they should endure, they should be eternal, like an eternal thing. Or another way, the first way that he spoke about, like energy, light, that is just a reflection of the essence. V'gam Ein Sof hu b'ispashtus, and by Ohr it's also in its extension. V'etzem einem ispashit. Therefore, you can't say an etzem Ein Sof because it doesn't extend. So it's there. V'yivayir in your Shefa, and you explain the difference between light and transmission. With Shefa hu mechuz davar. Shefa means there's transmitting something of substance. U'lechem poel shinui, and that's why it causes a shinui. It causes a change. Both in the that word I don't think he used, causes a change both in the one that the creator and the cause and the thing that and the object. Like in throwing, where the thrower is committed, is involved in it. And also the effect, the object, the action is a new thing, which means that it's manifests in it. Ill cause and effect, at times it's just automatic. And creating something new is manifest, but it's concealed because it's creating something new. So both things. Because it's new, it's both concealed but also manifest. He's adding that element. Okay. But the same thing in throwing, it's in order to cause something, it has a purpose, to do something. Remember, he said before, like gili min etzem is not to do something; it's not an object. There's no purpose there's no function that it serves. Same thing in the work, in the skill of, let's say, art, for example, where the koyach, the faculty, manifests greatly. So obviously, this is the middle of the subject. He's still going to continue Shefa. So at the beginning of chapter 14, we did chapter 53, pages 94 through 96.